I am CouchCoop and welcome to Still Holds Up, a video series I've been putting together about older PlayStation 4 games running on the 5. I want to see what's added, how they perform, and whether or not they still hold up against current game models. The selection process is quite difficult. Not all of these games I test make it through, and I like to put the top 3 to my audience who vote them in, and Mordor made it. Still Holds Up has proven to be one of the most unpopular video series I've ever put together, barring my horse video. There is, however, a hardcore huddle of subscribers who are enjoying this, and that's enough for me. If you want to find a YouTuber that dances to the popularity tune, hop on over to the gaming tab on YouTube, where you can find great content creators like KSI and iShowSpeed. It's awesome out there at the moment. My reluctance to adjust my content to align with what YouTube's looking for has cost me 7 years and 16,000 subscribers. There's YouTubers out there who have had their careers start, flourish, and a scandal, and then walked away from the platform within that time as millionaires. So that's my motivational speech over. That could have been so much worse. There could have been a 4-minute cringy Raid Shadow Legends advert, which are getting really out of hand. Some of the creators I watch are ridiculous with the large sponsorship window they offer. You get paid on how much time you put up, 30 seconds. 4 minutes is what's going at the moment.
With halfling elves and dwarves and game.
Okay mate, enough, we get it. You're an embittered old YouTuber. Can we look at the game? Just one more thing, I did want to talk about my style with commentary. A lot of people ask if I use a script or how it all works, and I have a bullet point system. So I have a number of sort of anchor points that I want to cover in that video, but I watch it with you in real time. This does a few things for me. It allows me to genuinely get to some emotion if I see something cool that I remember, and it also doesn't feel sort of detached and sterile like 98% of YouTube content creators. Yeah, I don't know what side of the bed I got out of today, but we better just get on, I think. We are looking at, now this is interesting, it's the day one version of the game running on the PlayStation 5. What do I mean by that? My internet is terrible, so when I put a disc in the machine, the patches take a very long time to download. That gives me like a massive 3-day window to go into the game and look at it raw, as Gordon would say. And this is cool because you might see some minor issues that the game had on launch, or certain things that they changed after those patches came through, and also whether or not that backwards compatibility is just completely working without any adjustments. We're very quickly moving into an era where you can't do this anymore, where even a single player sort of content based game will be live service when it comes to these updates. That is not a good thing. I've just done the Xeno Primal video review, and that game will not work if you do not have the internet. There is no choice. And I remember Xbox and Microsoft coming out with a DRM system on their games, and there being a massive uproar, and Sony taking the piss quite literally with an advert saying, no, you just lend a game to a friend, job done. My advice as a gamer of 37 years I've been playing video games, I've been on the planet a hell of a lot longer than that, is always buy physical. Do not go towards this digital landscape that they're pushing us to. When I say they, I'm talking about Microsoft and Sony. They're both doing it now. I don't mind a live service game. I don't. Monster Hunter World, like I got another year's worth of playthrough from all of that amazing DLC that got added for no charge. It was amazing. It was the way forward as far as I was concerned for single player content. But that content must be offline and must be able to be accessed if your machine is not connected to the internet. We all need to get behind this. Are you actually going to talk about Shadow of Mordor at all? Yeah, let's start that now and officially end the moan. We are still looking at pre-patch footage. Now this is 1080 and this is a pegged 30 frames per second. A very clean peg. What I mean is there's no dips, it doesn't judder, it's actually smooth and workable. It's a bit of a shock going from a 4K 30 frames per second game to this 1080, or not having that 60 frames per second. But it works, and with the game's age, it's kind of stunning. This game is easily one of the more graphically memorable PlayStation 4 titles and Pro, so the base level systems offered a quality or performance mode toggle. That's now gone. When you put this in on the 5, you've just got the one chunky 30 frames per second pegged 1080p mode. What changed after the installation of those patches? Nothing much. A lot of cool free content and some different sort of game modes and types but it wasn't like, wow, I've just seen, you know, a new graphics patch come in.
Are they sneaking around?
2014 was the year this game was made, and after, we haven't really seen a decent Lord of the Rings tribute on the video game systems since. Before this, we had an incredible local co-op ARPG Lord of the Rings game available on, I think it was the PlayStation 2 or even the 360. But this is my stance with the subject matter. I'm a big fan of Tolkien and I'm a big fan of Peter Jackson. That's kind of where it ends. I think we're all in agreement there. The game's premise is a brilliant one, placing you in this strange land that's completely populated by loads of orcs and orc camps. This is very much an orc-focused enemy, and they've dived quite deep into some of the different variants and animals that are partnered with this species. I'm just Assassin's Creeding it up here. It still looks damn good. The sun, the way it hits the sort of world, and its dynamic weather system, which has got loads of wet look stuff, and when it gets nighttime, it's super scary and atmospheric wandering around these cool places.
Stop moving!
I can clearly remember the emotions I had when I first saw this on my PlayStation 4 and Pro. It was a big graphical player, and it made a lot of noise just because of the way it looked and how well it paid tribute to the Tolkien lore. Its open world gameplay model was also doing a shit ton of stuff that Assassin's Creed already did, but this did it a bit smoother, a bit better, and it was also very busy with its NPC behaviors. There's always something going on. These orcs are interacting with each other. There's stuff going on with the slaves. There's different species of giant things wandering around. They're all fighting each other. You're kind of a spectator in this world that's organically operating. Its button mapping is super interesting also, giving the R2 trigger button access to the stealth mode. So many other games have changed this up and you're constantly clicking your R sticks to go into stealth, and it also has face buttons still with the close quarters combat moves. Games now, it's all shifted over to the shoulder. Dark Souls method of fighting, with this it was still like square and triangle, and that's a crazy thing, but it kind of works. Run is over on X, which you never get used to, but I love measuring how habits change with the pads and what buttons we assume to be the go-to buttons for combat or firing. Early first-person shooters like Time Splitters, there was an Aliens game as well, still took a while to use 2 of the analog sticks to align your movement and aiming that used to be done on some of the face buttons like strafe, left and right. The evolution of how we've become accustomed with these new controls that have also seem to have cast their shadow over most modern games, I find super interesting, and the only way to measure that is to go back to something that's nearly 10 years old and see how far this control system has metamorphosized. Did you just talk about buttons for like a minute and a half? Yep. And now we're going to look at the photo mode. So we've nipped over to all application data installed, and it does come with a cool photo mode, and as you know, I'm obsessed with them. This one isn't terrible, and it does offer quite a lot of angles that some modern photo modes don't, but I'm pretty sure those application patches came out maybe up to a year after initial release. Alright, it's probably time to talk about the gameplay and what's going on with these maps and symbols and traps and all manner of different side quests and objectives. Now we're going to get to something really important here, because Shadow of Mordor is famous for coming up with a mechanic that's called the Nemesis system, and it's used a lot in modern titles, and in short, it is a jostling system of bosses that you are potentially going to fight. So what that means is, behind the scenes, you'll have some hierarchy or change up with certain war bosses that you need to fight to progress in the game. Almost like a reroll system, but you get this actual screen showing where they're all positioned on almost like a chess style map, and they've all got personalities and different traits and weaknesses, and it's your job to sort of delve in, gather intel from other orcs by throttling them and getting information from them, which helps you build a sort of profile up of your next war boss. And that's handy because they might be weak to range or fire or be really scared of the mounts. There's some good situations, and the war bosses are difficult if you don't know what angle to approach them at. Alongside this sort of Nemesis, killer random War Boss Orc system is an actual structured campaign, which is represented by these yellow icons on your minimap. When you start getting bored of garroting orcs at random, you can start some structure, and it's got a cool story. You start off with sort of getting a reputation, freeing up various slave factions, even working for the orcs at one point to try and get some insider disruption going. There's loads of dialogue, and the cutscenes, they're a little bit dated. There's one thing I will mention, is your character model's face does show their age a bit. Remember, The Evil Within came out in this year, and that, all things considered, looks pretty good in the facial department. But it's not an open world orc killing combat game, and this is certainly that. Let's look at the combat, because it was the time of the QTE. Well, it still very much is the time of the QTE, but back then they were goddamned everywhere, and some of them were really innovative. You can see how that circle got smaller, they changed the button out. You're genuinely crapping yourself every time you go into that situation. With the orcs, if it happens and an orc kills you, they then get promoted and put on that damn Nemesis roster, which is hilarious, because it might happen a few times and you end up promoting this complete grunt to mid-level management and then have to fight him, and the whole thing was your fault. Constantly going into photo mode by accident because it's on L3. Take it off if you don't want to have to make a YouTube video about this game, but some of it results in some pretty cool looks. Now let's talk about the mounts and getting on them. Once you get enough perks, you can take over these things, hypnotize them, get on the backs of them, and they do so much damage. They're a lot of fun to traverse the landscape on as well. There's no true mount, you don't get a white horse or anything like that. So commandeering one of those things is certainly the way forward, and normally just about every war boss is petrified of them. Day-to-day combat is quite a strange affair. It does borrow from Arkham Asylum, and Mad Max, which is also still holds up, but does have quite a similar system. You need to be looking out for these little stars. You can't actually out and out kill somebody. Well, you could if you bash them enough, but you have to do kills, which occupy time, and you're vulnerable during this process. So you have to get a window of opportunity to be able to stab an orc and actually end its life properly. It does create some amazing situations. You've also got an unbelievably good amount of traversal mechanics and techniques with taking stuff down from above or below or creeping around, and the structures on this map are massive. I was so impressed with how much there is to explore and how embedded everything is within them. The minimap itself shows everything. It's not like a vision cone or you haven't discovered an enemy around a corner. It's all there, and some of those red arrows will go absolutely crazy. And that's the angle with the game, is that you kind of bite off more than you can chew and end up having to deal with like 30 orcs that are all running out of the fortresses towards you. It's brilliant stuff. It's not always orcs either that you're having to deal with on some of these campaign missions, and also Gollum is shown off in this game far better than that brand new Gollum game. It's cool to hear him and interact with some of the craziness that goes on in his life.
Sweet little ratses, where does he hide?
Desecrate one more body and your corpse will join them.
The sequel to this game is available on Game Pass, and I'm going to look at it on PC. I'd never got it over on my PlayStation 4, and it had some sort of stigma for over-rinsing this system, or maybe just changing some things around. I'll look into it. Also, pop-in. Still predominant with the game this old, that's totally understandable. I did notice some of it on the sides of these larger structures, but that brings me back to that 30 frames per second and 1080. At no point are you thinking, oh, this is so 9th gen. No, never. It's great, and I had a rip-roaring time revisiting it. Because it is 9 years ago, and you will have forgotten a lot of the intricacies that made this such a huge game on launch, and that's something I need to hit home as it was massive, and it was beautiful looking, and its crowd control and combat aspects with fighting massive swaths of orcs simultaneously is still cool feeling and still looks great. Very few open world games throw the kitchen sink at you like this game does with the amount of enemies, and I don't know of any modern game that embeds itself so well into that Tolkien lore, especially with the orcs. It really does feel like a special thing, and to have the Nemesis system in here for the first time and it to be everywhere in modern gaming mechanics is awesome to see the birthplace of that. And as a holds up game, wow, still great. My jaw hit the ground in 2014 when I fired this up. It was certainly slackened when looking at it in 2023. I was expecting major jank, maybe some bugs, nothing. Smooth gameplay and a genuinely great time with that campaign. I recommend looking at this if you've never touched it. If you've only gone near the second one, this will be knocking around for a couple of pounds pre-owned. It's worth snapping up on physical. That is the moral of the story. Make sure you've got it for the shelf and not for a hard drive or an account that you can't access a year later. I was, of course, Couch Coop, and this was the Still Holds Up series. I will put the link to the playlist in the comments, and I very much look forward to seeing you all down there. Make sure to check out the trending page on YouTube for gaming. It's amazing.
Needs bright master to show us the way. Bright master will guide us, will help us.
That's better. Burn.